All right. So good afternoon. First things first, my name is Lieutenant Troy Nico. I am the Force Trainee or Force Section Training Lieutenant. Yes, sir. So my first name is Troy, T-R-O-Y. Last name is Nico, N-I-C-K-O. And again, I run all force-related training here at the Academy. Real quickly, I'm going to give you guys a real quick breakdown of our levels of force, level 1, 2s, and 3s. Then we're going to take you out in our box drill area and give you an example of each one of these levels of force, and then we'll go outside and show you an actual live scenario. So the important thing here is level 1 force. Per definition, this is any force that is likely to cause only temporary pain, disorientation, and or discomfort during its application as a means of gaining compliance or any show of force. Okay, so the key here is pain with level 1. That's what officers are trained. If the actions of the officers are likely to cause pain, we would make it a level 1. The other thing is a show of force, which a show of force is utilizing either our handguns, rifles, or our less lethal tools as a show of force, which would include pointing that at an individual with the end goal of gaining compliance where we don't actually have to use that weapon system. Does that make sense? Okay. So what exactly is temporary pain? This is an important concept that we had to add to this use of force policy suite. The definition says it's a bodily sensation that causes brief temporary discomfort that stops, limits, or distracts from normal activities, and the key here is and subsides after the cause of the pain is removed. So pain is something temporary if it goes away after the officer's actions stop or subside. That is the key here. Pain that stays is no longer pain. That becomes an injury. That steps us up to the level 2 force. So per definition, level 2 force is any use of force that causes injury, that could reasonably be expected to cause injury, or that results in a complaint of injury greater than temporary pain. Now, regardless whether it was unintentional or unavoidable, that's another really important component of this. So the officer's actions cause injury. The intent does not matter. If I accidentally cause injury, it's still going to be looked at as a level 2 use of force. What type of options do we have that typically are likely to cause injury or cause injury? That would be our less lethal tools. Taser, 40 millimeter, bean bags, baton, OC. Those are the kind of systems that we're using in order to make it a level 2. Per definition, what is an injury? This is also something that we had to add to our definitions. It's physical harm or damage to a person's body incurred over the course of an officer-involved physical interaction. Scratches, abrasions, these are all examples of injuries. It's important that the officers understand that. Pain that goes away is 1. Injuries or pain that stays is a level 2. Does that make sense? Questions on that real quick? Okay. Now, it's also important that we document these injuries. We have to make sure that officers are recognizing these injuries and properly documenting them. So that's another important component with the training. Level 2 force would include, again, ECW, the taser, 40 millimeter beanbag, OC, empty hand techniques like control, leg sweeps, those kind of things. Strikes or attempted strikes with impact weapons. And deployment of things like our flashbang devices. The noise flash diversionary, the flashbangs that we use for tactical operations. Horse range strikes, again, when we're on the horses themselves. And the pursuit intervention technique, as long as it is 35 or below. Does that make sense? Questions? Level 3 force. This is our highest level of force. This is any use of force that results in, could reasonably result in, serious physical injury, hospitalization, or death, regardless of whether the force was unintentional or unavoidable. Some examples of this would be, well, first of all, the definition hasn't changed. It's the same definition, but some examples are use of deadly force. Critical firearms discharges, where we actually discharge one of our firearms, our rifle, handgun, something like that. Even if it's an accidental discharge with one of those weapon systems, it's going to be looked at as a critical firearm discharge. Okay? Force resulting in serious physical injury, loss of consciousness, seizures, those kind of things. That's going to automatically ramp it up to a level 3. Okay? Bites with our police service dogs, the canine apprehension dogs. That will automatically make it a level 3. Now, cycles with these new Taser 10s that we have, the important component is delivery of power. So if we deliver a 5-second cycle with somebody, that means they've potentially been under power for 5 seconds. If we do this 3 or more times, that makes it a higher level of force. So 3 or more cycles with the Taser becomes a level 3. 2 or fewer makes it a level 2. So we tried to simplify that not only for the officers, but for the supervisors as well. Okay, questions on that? Okay. Some more. A discharge longer than, or excuse me, it's a cycle longer than 15 seconds. So if we have a person under power for 15 or more than 15 seconds, it's automatically going to become a level 3. That is because, again, they've been under power for an extended period of time. Now, it's also important to understand that that's during a single interaction, and it's whether continuous or consecutive. So if I do a 5-second cycle, there's a break. I do another 5-second cycle, there's a break, another 5-second. It's the same incident. Does that make sense? Okay. 4 or more strikes with our baton or improvised impact weapons. Things like if we need to use a radio to protect ourselves. These improvised things, they're not necessarily designed as impact weapons, but we have to improvise. We have to just kind of make do with what we have. Maybe a flashlight. Okay? So it's important that officers understand that if we're using something as an impact weapon, it's still going to be looked at as a level 3. Horse rein strikes if we're striking some of our avoidance areas like head, neck, throat, the groin. That's going to automatically take what would normally be a level 2 and make it a level 3 because of where we're striking the person. Okay? And in level 2 against a handcuffed subject. So any of those things that we talked about, but now we add the component that they're handcuffed, that's going to automatically take it to the next highest level because of the potential for serious physical injury. Again, their hands are restrained behind their back. Now we're doing some kind of level 2 force. We want to make sure that that's investigated at a higher level to see why it was necessary and make sure that their actions were reasonable as well as minimal, again, per the policy. Okay? And finally, a pit maneuver that's over 35. Okay? Also, a pit maneuver that's over 35 but results in serious physical injury, hospitalization and or death, where if it's something that would have met the parameters for under 35 miles an hour, but this serious injury results, we're going to take it up to a higher level because we need to figure out what happened. Okay? Questions on those? And that's it. Nice, quick, and easy.
One question.
Yes, absolutely.
Real simple. When you talk about the horse reins, you're talking about from the saddle and their harness.
Correct.
Using the leather for a weapon or for a use.
So as the horse reins, what we're talking about is the rider, the police officer on the horse at the time. And yes, if someone's trying to come up and grab the halter or grab the horse, they will use those reins as a striking implement in order to cause pain, dissuade them from trying to unhorse the rider or one of those type of things and put the officer in a more dangerous situation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions real quick that I could answer? All right, so we're going to move out to the box drill, and I'm going to give you an example of a 1, 2, and a 3. Okay? Real quickly, is everyone good? All right, so real quickly, this is our box drill area. This is something that we do. It's a rapid threat assessment, rapid threat response drill area. This is not full-blown scenarios. Officer Ryan's going to be going through this, and it's going to be very quick and rapid. He's going to identify something. He will react appropriately, and then as soon as it's done, we'll call index. And then I'll explain the levels of force. We'll do the next one, level 2, and then we'll do a level 3 example right after that. But we're going to hit you with a lot of stuff really fast. All right? Turn it over to them.
All right, going to stand over here. All right, play ready. Student ready. Enroll.
Hey man, who are you?
Albuquerque Police Department. I need you to put that knife down.
Who are you?
Put that knife down. I'm the Albuquerque Police Department.
Whoa, don't shoot me, don't shoot me.
Okay, I need you to stand up and face away from me. Do not reach for that knife. Force will be used against you. Shift to your right. Drop down your left knee. Now down your right knee. Put your hands behind your head. Do not move. Do you understand?
Yes. Index.
This was an example of a level 1. Remember what I told you in the classroom is if we point one of our weapon systems at an individual, that is a show of force. That's going to be evaluated as a level 1 use of force. Okay? With our end goal here is to show force so we actually don't have to use these weapon systems. So that's an example of a level 1. Okay? We'll show you level 2 next.
We're ready. We're ready. And roll.
Hey, who the hell are you?
Albuquerque Police Department, I need you to put that knife down. Force will use against you. You're gonna get shot if you
You know what? I don't need a fucking knife. Come on. I'll beat you
Stop
up.
or you're gonna get tased. Stop or you're gonna get tased. Take your taser. Stay on the ground. Do not move. Flatten out on your stomach. Put your hands out to your side like an airplane. Palms facing up. If you move, you'll be tased again.
All right, so this is an example of a level 2 force. What you'll notice is it was a large hook and loop training suit, and then the probes that come out of the Taser 10 are designed to actually hook onto that suit, and it allows us to tell where the officer is actually deploying those probes. There is no power coming out of the Taser at this point. This is purely for training. Okay? Level 3 is coming up.
Everybody's ready? Student ready? And roll.
Albuquerque Police Department, put that gun down. Get on the ground. Subjects, move back from here. Move back. Subject on the ground. I know you've been shot. When you get your help, I need you to crawl away from that gun. Do not reach for that gun or you'll be shot. Subjects, on your knees. Get on the ground. 2 subjects, get on the ground.
Index. Index.
All right, so this was our level 3 force. Obviously, any critical firearm discharge, this is also use of deadly force. Like the chief explained, we try to incorporate things that have happened in the past into our current training. This is a really good example of an officer dealing with a deadly force situation, but also having to be cognizant of his backdrop. There were innocent people on each side. So we make sure that they are very, very cognizant of the threat and how to address the threat safely without potentially involving innocent bystanders. Okay? This again is a level 3 use of force. Any questions that I can answer? Okay, we're going to transition to the outside scenario at this point then. Let's worry about all the...
All right, we're going.
Subject on the ground, I need you to scoot away from that gun. Do not reach for that gun or force me to get you again. I need you to rotate away from me and have your head facing the building, your feet facing me. I understand that you're shocked. We're going to get you medical attention as soon as we can. Put your hands out to your side like an airplane, palms facing up. Do not move, understand? get you medical attention. Subject, do not move. Ground.
You guys want to move in now? I'll just kind of explain it real quick. Everybody good? Okay. And again, this is one of those important dynamics that officers are constantly being tested and trained how to react quickly but appropriately in a deadly force situation. In this particular case, officers were presented with deadly force, responded, took the opportunity to create distance, come back, check the condition of themselves, their partner, check themselves for any kind of injuries, and then they need to slow things down a little bit. We need to make sure that we get available resources en route. We also have to make sure that we are communicating. We requested another officer. That officer came up. They formulated a plan, and they communicated with the subject that force had been used on. They placed her in a position of disadvantage and moved her away from the firearm. This allowed us then to move up safely. The safest we can be when we move up is what's important. So they moved her away from the weapon, and then they moved up safely, handcuffed her, took her into custody, and then most importantly, rendered aid. We need to make sure that we render aid and then make sure we put chest seals, tourniquets, those kind of things on, and then we request additional units and make sure we're good to go. Are there any questions about this scenario? Yes, absolutely. So as soon as they're presented with a deadly threat, yes, they're trained to stop that action. And what I mean by that is, as the gun's coming up, that is now a deadly threat. So we are trained, and we train officers to, as quickly and appropriately as possible, come up and really stop the actions of the individual. That's our key here. So, gun at the... Go ahead, Chief.
It gets very complicated, and I think that's why it's important that a lot of times people just don't look at a situation and say officers did this in this situation, thus they are wrong. Because there are very little small keys that are going to make a huge difference. An individual that officers approach who are already standing with the gun at their side, officers may have the opportunity to negotiate and be able to talk to them. But when an individual is sitting in a seated position, reaches and grabs a firearm and starts to withdraw it from their waistband, their intent is pretty clear, and I think we could all see the difference at that point in time. An individual standing there who officers are able to negotiate, and somebody who has now shown the intent, who has actually grabbed a firearm, is starting to retrieve it. There's this misconception that officers have to wait till they've gotten shot at or the gun directly pointed at them. That officers can explain their intent, that they felt they were in a deadly force situation with the individual grasping the firearm, pulling the firearm out, and presenting the motions as if they were going to now be assaulted. So it's those little differences sometimes that are key on how use of force investigations proceed. And that's very important for the public to understand, because I would hate for people to have the wrong impression, or somebody who may be going through a mental health crisis and the wrong information go out that, oh, you can do this and the officers won't shoot until you shoot. And then obviously that's going to end tragedy for that individual, because that's not the case. So I think it's so important that we remember that each case is individual. It's very specific, small details that are going to make the difference as to when deadly force could be utilized or not. Troy, anything else to add?
No, sir. Great point as far as it's the actions of the individuals that are dictating this. We look for the actions of the individual. Again, they're making the movements towards that gun. They're kind of at that point where we're forced to react. So, absolutely.
I have a question. How soon should the suspect's weapon be, basically taken up? How soon should that be confiscated? Because when I saw when they were shot, of course they kept the weapon on the suspect, but how soon should they go in and grab that?
So you're saying post-shooting or actual evidence afterwards?
So post-shooting.
Okay. So, and this is a really important part about this particular scenario, is the individual was able to separate themselves from that weapon. That made it a lot safer for us to go ahead and make that approach. If we can't do that and they're unable to move, then it becomes a little more of a dynamic encounter where we have to make sure that we're not moving up too quickly, because the firearm is still right there. So the question is, once we can make it as safe as possible, then we can move up. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
LT, can you talk a little bit about danger cues? Can you explain that to them a little bit?
Absolutely. So there are cues that officers also are trained to look for. In this particular case, things like statements, like if you don't leave, I'm going to kill you. Reaching for particular areas of the body. Officers are trained that weapons are usually kept in the waist, that kind of stuff. So they start making these threats, and then they reach behind their back. That should automatically prompt the officers to understand this is now getting more and more dangerous. So at that point, they should hopefully create distance, get a weapon out so they can quickly react.
I think it's important you talk about what's changed pre-CASA and post-CASA. And I think one of the things to recognize is we now give people first aid. I could tell you during my first run at this department, my first 20 years before my retirement in 14, it was actually way out of the ordinary that we got involved in the shooting. We started to give the individual chest seals, first aid, tourniquets. But as we've advanced, we now have part of our policy, and we train our officers that you will give life-saving measures when the situation is completed and it's safe to do so. And there's been countless lives that have been saved by officers taking quick action to start giving first aid. So that is another big difference of post-accident, pre-accident. And you see that not every department across the state trains that. So individuals who are critical of our training at times should really take a look and understand the specifics of the training and how we've evolved and how much more advanced we are than a lot of different parts of the state. And it's actually written into our policy. Any other questions? Yes.
I know it's hard to make a moment and aiming and shooting a gun and getting it to go where you want it to go isn't easy, but are they trained to shoot someone in certain places to disarm or to be less deadly?
They're trained to shoot center mass, unless the standard response is center mass, and then if something doesn't change, they may transition to somewhere else if they have to. But that's basically our training is the largest part of the body, because you do understand it. And I'm glad you see it. Like in the heat of the moment, it's not easy to hit a target. And a lot of times officers miss their target. So that's why they're trained to shoot towards the biggest part of the body. Yes, sir.
APD and the citizens come in contact with each other a lot. For a successful person to go home, officer and the civilian, what advice do you have to them?
Listen to commands. Every single time we see that individuals don't follow commands, and it leads to these shootings. But it goes even beyond the situation itself. If we have a loved one who's going through something, because let's face it, a lot of our officer-involved shootings sometimes deal with individuals who want to end their life, and they use officers as a means to do so. And I think a lot of times we don't even have CIT history on these individuals, so we need families to start reaching out earlier and working with their loved ones when they see those warning flags and getting us involved.
Any other questions?
Thank you guys. Thank you
All right.
everybody for coming.
Thank
you.
you.